Strategy 5, asset swaps. In some ways, this is the most fun for me. I work on product at Valor, and we've built out the idea here of automating a strategy that is not something we invented, but also is reasonably uncommon because in the old world, it was really tough to implement. The idea here is that, let's imagine, again, using the NVIDIA example, you're doing a 2-year trust, you put $1 million of NVIDIA in, and let's say you did this in 2022. And over the course of the next 6 months, the trust 3x'd and it grew to $3 million. You've still got a year and a half left on your GRAT. You could let it ride, hold the NVIDIA stock in the trust, and hope that it continues to go up, or at least stays flat, and lock in and get that $2 million-ish of growth to your kids. But what if the stock comes back down during that 2 years? What if at the end of 2 years exactly, it's come back down to 2 million? You've given up $1 million of gains that you already had in your GRAT. There's a better way, and that's with asset swaps. The idea is that, let's say the stock goes up from 1 million to 3 million in year one. You can trade that stock out of the GRAT and replace it with anything of equal value. You can put in another stock, you can put in cash, or as we have here, you can put in a promissory note, essentially a loan to the GRAT. And what that does is it locks the value, the growth that you've already gotten into the trust. So let's say the NVIDIA grew from 1 million to 3 million on the second day of the trust. You immediately swap out that asset for a promissory note. The value of the trust is now locked in at $3 million, and we're guaranteeing that $2 million will go to your kids estate tax-free, no matter what happens with NVIDIA down the road. That's a really nice way to get peace of mind. One, you're guaranteeing that you're capturing that growth estate tax-free for your kids. But you can do even better. You can take that $3 million of NVIDIA that you swapped out of the GRAT, and you can put into a new GRAT. And now if the NVIDIA keeps growing, you don't want to give up growth, right? You don't want to swap it out and then find that the NVIDIA doubled again and you missed out on it. Well, take the 3 million and put that into a GRAT. And now you've got 2 GRATs going, one that locked in that value by swapping in a promissory note, and one trust that now has 3 million of NVIDIA in it. If that doubles again, well, great, 3 million more is going to your kids tax-free. And if it falls from 3 million back down to 2 million, well, that GRAT just pays you back the 2 million, and this GRAT still has that initial growth going to your kids. So you get the best of both worlds.
Is it fair, Jeff, to say that this is kind of a solution for shorter term periods than 2 years, for example?
Yeah, this is I will say this is something that would be a benefit, would be a powerful tool, no matter how long your GRAT is lasting for, assuming that you don't know how the asset is going to perform, which is true with GRAT assets, right? If you're putting in a bond, there may be no reason to do this. But whether it's a 2-year trust or a 10-year trust, when it goes up, it might make sense to lock in the value. And just practically speaking here, how do we do this? Well, when you set up your GRAT, we work together to choose a triggering value where once the assets in the GRAT grow that much, we will notify you that you've hit your threshold and ask you if you'd like to swap. And if so, we'll automatically spin up the documents necessary to effectuate that swap and lock in the gains. And if you want to spin this into another trust. And so, you put in NVIDIA and it goes up, you have 50% growth target. We track the price. It hits the 50% growth target. We let you know. And then the next day we can have the thing swapped out just to lock it in. So let me just look at some questions here. Does the GRAT structure help even if you live in a state that's more punitive with estate tax? Yes. In general, I'm always careful because every state is different and I'm not a New York lawyer. It's possible I'm missing something. But in general, yeah, you're moving these assets out of your estate for federal and state purposes. And importantly, you're not using up your exemption. So for New York purposes, this doesn't use up $1 of your New York exemption. And so it's actually, in some ways, more powerful for states with a lower exemption. Also a lower tax, and so maybe not as valuable dollar for dollar. But if you're going to be paying estate tax on anything over $3 million in New York, well, doing something where you're not using up exemption, like a GRAT, could be really, really useful, as opposed to like an IDGIT where you're using up more of that exemption at the federal level and going over your New York limit. So it's another good question, and I think the answer is yes. This is potentially powerful there too. we are over time. I could say infinitely more about these things. I'm going to pause, really stop there, and leave you all with the idea that, bottom line, zoom out. Grats are incredibly powerful and made only more so by all of these optimizations. Valor makes each of these steps very simple, so I don't want anyone to feel daunted by the amount of information that we've imparted today. This is ultimately, you can, I mean, I wish we had some of our GRAT clients chiming in the chat here. I know some of you are here. All of this stuff is really kind of hidden when we're setting up a GRAT. Not, we'll talk about it and we'll make sure that you're making the right choices, but ultimately you don't have to worry about this. You check a box during our intake process that says, yes, I want to enable swaps, and yes, I want a 2-year rolling GRAT. That's it. We set it up for you. It's very simple. So don't be daunted by the amount of complexity here. You can definitely zoom out and think about this as a very straightforward way to move assets out of your estate without using up exemption if you think you're going to be over the limit during your lifetime. And so the last point, just to circle all the way back around and to talk about who this is for. Yes, it's right to think about this as anyone who's going to be over the limit, you should do this. But who is that? Many of our clients are people who in the old days would not have thought of themselves and whom the lawyers would not have thought of as candidates for this sort of strategy because it costs money and it's overhead. It's a bit of a hassle, especially with the lawyers, as opposed to Valor. And so maybe you don't bother with this if you're 45 and have $7 million because you're nowhere near the estate tax limit yet and you're young. I'll dispute that, every day of the week now. It's really cheap to do this now, especially with Valor. We make it very easy. And if you're going to be over the limit, it's better to do it today than tomorrow, and better to do it tomorrow than 10 years from now. So if you have any doubt here, if you think you might be over the limit down the road, or if you're just curious, I think it's absolutely worthwhile.